Bruce Baker from Workplaces, the Business Builders in Edmonton. How's it going today?
Not too bad. How about you, Trevor?
Man, doing great.
Yeah.
Couldn't be better because I get to interview you today, and really wanted to ask you some questions about your business, Workplaces, what you do, what your background is, how you got started, and why it's so important to you.
Yeah.
So let's start off with a little bit of your history and background. How did you get started in all this?
Yeah, well, it's started in the beginning where I was the typical academic, right? And had a fascination with people and workplace. And hence the term or the name Workplaces came out in the beginning. And I had the privilege, or at least I consider it a privilege, of being involved in and being able to lead different areas in the business. My core was HR and ended up as an HR executive for a large multinational. But ultimately, the exposure that I had to multiple business environments caused me to become the business geek, and especially with a major focus in human behavior. So throughout my corporate career, I got obviously exposed to a lot of consultants and coaches and, the things that they do and they don't do. And like anybody else, you judge and you evaluate and you see where you get the value and where you don't get it. And one thing that appeared to me while I was there was we have, and still today, we have a lot of academic institutions, we have a lot of consultants, coaches. And again, this is not to criticize anybody in a negative way, but coaching and consulting individually is not overly effective. Coaching is there to stimulate or get the mind to execute from an emotional standpoint, and consulting is there to provide and hopefully help the receiver implement subject matter expertise or technical expertise. So there was definitely a miss there. And in 2014, I was laid off, unfortunately, because I was having a great time, building the HR function in this multinational company, and it was actually a blessing in disguise. At that point, I decided, well, there has to be, if I speak to any small business, and if I look at our economy, both domestically and nationally, and even internationally, for most countries, your small business is the backbone. And if they are the backbone, why is the stuff that I've learned and the person professionally and personally I've become, why is that so expensive? And why is that such a challenge for small to mid-sized business, gaining that advantage and being able to utilize these resources? So I got to a point where I said, you know what, I'm going to do it differently. So we started off calling the company HR All In.
Okay.
And HR All In was directly associated with giving small business HR expertise at a price they could afford, but also purely connected to their bottom line. So HR, at least in those days, was very much focusing on how to become the strategic partner at the table. And the only way you become a strategic partner at a table, regardless of whether it's HR, IT, finance, whatever the case may be, is to show bottom line impact. And the only way to do that is measuring numbers. And ultimately, that's the language of business. So we put this business in place, and thinking the first year or two we're going to be unproductive probably and just not profitable, and the opposite was completely the opposite. And we grew very significantly. We scaled the company, and eventually realized that we weren't just being called to solve HR-related issues. We were being called to resolve process improvements, efficiencies, profitability, financials, the whole gamut. And it got to a point where we decided, our calling is not just the HR component. It's much broader than that. So again, based on my background and what I've been exposed to, I decided to leverage that even further, and we finally rebranded to Workplaces. And very recently, we've now turned it around a little bit, and we've refreshed our brand, and now we're the Business Builders by Workplaces. So in short, that's where it came from, and we've been going on for about 12 years now and being very successful, and hopefully we continue to be.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us.
No problem.
You mentioned something earlier in your explanation there that, this is a calling. Mm-hmm. So, calling is different than a career. So
yes.
With that being said, what do you feel that calling represents, and who is it that you're called to help?
The calling, and it's, yes, very, very different to a career. Calling is, from a principled standpoint, you see a incredible gap or something that needs to be solved in society, in a group, professionally, personally in the world, whatever the case may be. And it's just from a principle, philosophical standpoint, it's not acceptable. And the gap that we saw in the calling that I had was, even if it doesn't make me a multi-billionaire, and I'm being silly when I say that, but even I don't care about that. It's about seeing a significant hole in the fabric of our business world that's not being solved, and the pain continues to exist. Now, who is that pain? And it's probably going to answer the question you asked, who is that calling for? And that is the small business owner. A lot of these folks, again, depending on geography, location, come from a very humble trades background, or, it doesn't even have to be trades. It could be the white collar work as well. And like me, they see, I could do that better, and I can improve that. And, apart from wanting to feel autonomous and wanting to feel that you're empowered, you can run your own business, a lot of them have this, I really think I can make a big difference in people's lives. And ultimately, if you think about it, that's the purpose of a business. Mm. Anybody that tells me they're in it for the money, good luck. It's a very short-term endeavor then. But the calling was to ensure that even if I could make a small dent in the ability for small business to actually survive longer than what the stats say, and even if I could make a small dent in small business owners that experience autonomy. And what I mean by that is that they built this business, they started this business, they're growing this business because they want the autonomy themselves. They want to be well off. They want to also spend time with their families. They want to be healthy. They want to have balance. Unfortunately, the opposite is what we see. We see burnout. We see families broken. We see businesses that, the owner works for the business. I'll go as far as using the slave word, right, as opposed to the business working for them, right, and making them prosperous, not just financially, but personally as well. So the calling is, for me, if I've got the knowledge, expertise, if I've got the emotional fortitude, and I have the answers to these problems that people continuously come up against, it's my obligation is to go and give of that to people so we can at least make a small improvement as much as possible. And that's what that is.
So in that, you've identified, who you help, small, medium enterprises, and what are some of the common problems that they come to you with? Like when they are reaching out and, let's say they've built it up to $1 million or 3 million, and they come to you. What is the catalyst that causes them to reach out to you, Bruce, and to Workplaces to help them solve?
It's an interesting question because the first word is problem. And the interesting part is that we all believe that they're problems, but 100% of the time they come to me with symptoms. And, just because my arm hurts or because my ear hurts doesn't mean my arm and my ear is a problem. There's something else that's going on inside. So a doctor would typically ask what the symptoms are. What are you feeling? And when it comes to business owners, it's really the top three. One, I'm not making enough money. My business is not making enough money. Or to the extreme, my cash flow is not there and I just can't afford payroll anymore. Maybe I should downsize or restructure or start from the beginning again. The second big one is I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. It feels like I'm working for a taskmaster, frankly. And I've got absolutely no time for my family, for myself. And when I started this business, I thought this was going to at least give me the opportunity to not only contribute to people in a better way, but also to be rewarded. And most of them say, I don't want to become a multimillionaire. It's not something if it happens, great, bonus, but it's not something I'm striving to do. What I am striving to do is to be able to contribute back to people and at least get some level of reward back. And they don't. And then the third one, which is probably really the most complex one, is people. The business owner and his or her relationship with others, but starting with themselves. Most of them have lost confidence, or they've been kicked and kicked to a point that they, in psychology they call it learned helpless, where there's just no way to get out of this. Bruce can't help me, Jen can't help me, so-and-so can't help me. There's no hope, right? And what happens is it's a little bit of a cascading effect, and it happens all the time. If they've got employees, you can see employees are feeling the same way. When you speak to the owner about their employees or their team, the owner, well, you can't get good help these days, is the old saying, or, this generation, that generation. And then, unfortunately, you have that cascade down to customers, and then you have your supplier problems, and that's your supply chain issues. So really, it's the people component that any business owner, I don't care where they come from, people is probably the most, if not the only complexity in business. So the three big things, money, time, and people. The interesting part is that money and time is an outcome of your ability to be effective with people, starting with yourself. And those are the big three. So
given that you really are trying to solve people problems inside the business, because it's those three things that are causing the questions and the self-doubt and whatnot. So I guess what would be step one in your approach to exposing that issue or that symptom and working on a path to correcting it?
Steps. You remind me of a client. It's actually a brand new client, 2 weeks into it right now, construction company, 2 owners. And, you talk about the diagnostic side of it. And for many years now, I always look at the phone and how they interact with their phones. So when they start off, it's always, excuse me, sorry, I just have to get this. Or, sorry, I just have to get this text. And we talk about symptoms. That is a very simple way of understanding, okay, I can see those symptoms. I can see what you're doing. And long story short, over time, you see far less dependence on the phone, the texting goes away, and then the focus is in place. Now, these 2 guys are a great example of, you sit down with them, you talk with them, you relieve them of some of their stress. I actually even got a hug 2 weeks ago from one of the owners, but which is fantastic. But it doesn't last too long, right? So you go to any motivational program or whatever the case may be, you're up in the clouds for about a day after that, and then it disappears. You don't implement anything, and you go back to the same way. So we see that happening with these 2 guys, and it also comes out, in simple things where, we'll ask them for their financials, to have a look and do a deep dive into their financials. They just don't have the time to do that, right? And so my partner and I, Jen, decided, yesterday's session, when we joined them for the second time, yesterday's session was going to be focusing on capacity, focusing on how they see their day-to-day. We always say to people, time management in itself as a concept is flawed. It's not about time management, because the brain can't manage time. That's an intangible. The brain can manage action. So we talk about the urgent, important component of actions. What are the right actions that you're taking that are highly important and urgent? So we start doing this exercise, and I'm looking at Jen and she's looking at me, and I'm realizing this is not going well at all. They're just not getting it. They understand it intellectually, but they're not engaging emotionally. And that's
so how do you get them
part.
to see it? How do you get them to see that?
So we started putting their points or their action items, their to-do list, et cetera, and that wasn't working. So I got up and I started asking them, or at least one of the owners, I said, well, why are your subs not showing up on time? Why are you running like a chicken with your head chopped off? Because you've got payroll to do, and you've got this to do because that was a failed inspection and the client is not happy and you have to get a hold of the sub. Well, the sub says he needs to be there at 3, or I say to the sub he needs to be there at 3 o'clock. He arrives at 4:30, and then the customer gets angry. Then I said, stop. What are we talking about? We're talking about symptoms. And I said something profound to him. I said, your sub is not the problem. Doing your payroll is not the problem. The problem is you. And of course, like anybody would really? Problem's on me. So the problem is you. You are not holding your subs accountable. You're not holding your admin accountable. You don't have a process to get your payroll approved that doesn't require you filling in the document or filling in the spreadsheet in order to determine what hours are in the field and paying them accordingly. So you've got systems problems. You've got accountability problems. You want to be the good boss, what came out of his mouth yesterday. You can be the good boss. You can be a great leader. That doesn't mean you have to be a jerk. It just means that you can hold people accountable, set expectations, and set some systems in place. So everything he was agreeing with the first two, and then until I said systems. He says, well, I just don't have time to build the systems. And I said, exactly. Why don't you have time? Well, you don't have time because of you. You are not allowing yourself to have the time in order to build those things. And the next thing I said to him was, and this was intimidating for him, was systems sound really complicated. Systems sounds a lot of work. And I said, absolutely not. So we went through a process of challenging every single one of his thoughts. And I said, well, if this could do that, and then that could do that, that doesn't involve you at all, how much time do you think you'll save? He says, well, not that much, probably about an hour and a half a day. And I said, okay, times that by 6 or even 7, because that's the days that you're working right now. And then click. I said, what could you do with that time? Not just within the business, but also outside of your business. Yeah, okay. And I said, well, here's the even more interesting part. And I showed him the flip chart piece of paper. And I said, we've got 5 more to go. So we spent the rest of the time looking at each one, challenging it, not just intellectually, but also challenging it emotionally. Why don't you trust that person to do it? Well, she's not really that assertive, so she's not going to put her foot down. I said, do you need her to be assertive to put her foot down? Well, not really. Why does she need to put her foot down? Well, they don't listen to anybody. Is that a her problem or is that a him problem? Right? So we go through that process, and it's every single time what helps, what finally solves it for the owner, at least one piece at a time, is their realization that it's not an external issue that's the problem. Those are the symptoms. The problem is starts with them, and that's why the owner or the author of the company is so important, so special, and that's what we focus on to try to redirect that energy into a more productive direction.
So it sounds like you really get involved with the business, with the founder themselves.
Oh yeah,
and you're really just exposing what they're not able to see.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Because if you're too close to the issue, too close to the thing, that you sometimes cannot see for yourself where the problems are.
Oh yeah.
So once you've been working with a company for a while, what are the next steps? Okay, so you start revealing these things. You start showing, where the gaps are and where the efficiencies can be grown and built. What's the next step?
Great question again. And it's, again, something I said to him yesterday, or both the partners, was it's, when you look at a shell on the beach, you pick it up, or you look at a trunk of a tree, there's hardly anything in nature that I'm aware of, at least, that doesn't have layers of some sort. They grow over time. They become stronger over time. A business is a system that relies on the emotional fortitude and growth and strength of the owner, who's the author of that company and system. So as soon as we completed this discussion yesterday, he was very much relieved afterwards, and he started seeing the light, which was fantastic. But then his other partner jumped in and said, okay, but we also need to look at that, and we also need to look at this. And I pushed back and I said, you're absolutely right, we do. But a house without a foundation, or a shaky foundation, is not going to be a house at the end of the day. It's going to be a mess. Your understanding of the basic foundation that you're setting over here, the first layers that you're setting over here, are absolutely critical. Once we put that in place, then we can look at the next layer. And that's what we do with any business build, or whether it's rescuing a business because they're in trouble, or whether it's just growing or scaling a business, is that we look at every single layer. If a layer is not in place, we put that layer in place before the next one comes on, right? And what that's doing is that's creating strength on strength on strength. Not just because that's the right thing to do, but also because we're big proponents of sustainability. What do I mean by that? Not just environmental, of course, but also from a business standpoint, is everything we put in place is not just for today. The business has to have what they have in place. We need to put what they need to be put in place, not just for today, but at least 5 to 6 years out. Right? So what we put in today is not at the expense of what needs to come in tomorrow. Everything complements each other.
So really, you're trying to get them to a spot where their business can actually begin to run more efficiently, and better operationally, and be resilient, right, for the future.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, what kind of companies should be reaching out to you and asking for help? Like, who is in that spot that would be the right choice to give you a call?
I would first preface it by saying that it's not, we don't exclude companies or industries, etc. But the core, going back to the very reason why we do what we do, are for our trades businesses, small to mid-sized trades businesses. With the event of AI. It's not really the guys that do the hands-on work or the trade stuff that could be impacted by AI. Those are more the knowledge workers. But these are the guys that need that focus, that need that support. These are the guys or the businesses that the reasons why we have roads and bridges and construction, buildings, etc. Our economy, our backbone. So that's that. We are highly dedicated to the trades. Living in Alberta, living in Edmonton, this is trades haven, and we are that's our service area and the people we really want to focus on, and like you say, create strength, but also make sure that they're resilient over the next couple of years, several years.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of businesses need, because when you talk about people in the trades. So we're talking plumbing, electrical, manufacturing, building, all these things.
Yes.
They are usually highly skilled and driven individuals in their respective discipline.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
What they don't teach you in trade school is how to build a business.
Absolutely.
They don't teach you how to manage your expenses. They don't teach you how to do job costing. They don't teach you, how to run HR, how to hire people, how to train people, how to build out systems. They don't teach you how to do the basics, like how to read your profit and loss statements, and your financial statements, and how to build a projection going forward. And that's where a company like yours can come in and give them those building blocks.
Absolutely, yeah.
Start building and creating a real business and not just a job.
Yeah, right? And it's interesting you say building blocks, because a lot of, and I'll pick on the trade specifically because I see this on a regular basis, is that these are individuals. Everybody is very hard and tough on themselves to a certain degree, but the trades folks are unnecessarily hard on themselves. Right, it's the Alberta way. It's go get her done type of thing. And if they fail and they're not good enough, they're really, really tough on each other and on themselves. And when they come into building a business, you still got to hold yourself accountable, but you need to also give yourself grace. You need to also realize how amazingly effective you can be. And when you fail, it's the best teacher in the world. But when you succeed because of who you are. So we also want to really remind these business owners that their potential is significant. They just need to believe in themselves to move forward.
Yeah, that's great. And, that's why, businesses like yours exist. It's to help other ones grow. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that with your audience. Hopefully somebody who's listening and watching will be able to reach out and really get a few questions answered.
You betcha.
Because you right now offer a 90-minute business building session.
Yeah.
Maybe explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. So we offer this to anybody that's game, anybody that wants to get to understand not just about their own business and the depth of their business, but also get to understand who we are and how we work. So it's at no charge to anyone. You get to sit with us. You get to pick our brains. You get to get us to do an in-depth analysis of your business, tell you exactly where your business is at. Easily 9 out of 10 times, we will provide you with insights into your business that they haven't seen before. They weren't even aware. And really anything that they've got to ask or they are curious about or need more information about, at the end of the session, we want to ensure, and so far we've got a 10 out of 10 score on this where, they leave the session, whether they work with us or not, they leave the session with a few real big golden nuggets they can take with them. But again, if we leave or part ways and we never see each other again, we consider it our job done, because we've left them with something that they haven't had before, and they didn't even have to open up their wallet. Maybe a cup of coffee. I'll give them that, but ultimately it's there for the business community, and we want to make an impact, even if it's within those 90 minutes.
Amazing. Hey, thanks so much, Bruce.
Thank you.